Yeah, either way, I just
You haven't
figured
started recording yet?
I just did right now. I figured I'd let folks know.
We'll stop.
So funny timing. My friend is just starting his podcast segment on the Be Heard Talk that I was telling you about,
Mm-hmm.
and he's doing his on Nick Cannon, and he's got a rabbi in his show. I feel like I saw.
So he does have a rabbi on the show for that particular conversation?
My friend Stanley, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think that's probably the best way to go about it.
I wonder if I feel like I saw a picture of that rabbi with Nick Cannon, but I don't know if I misunderstood what I was saying or what. But anyways, that's that. So yeah, what do you guys want to talk about?
Man, whatever. I just kind of, a lot of stuff going on social media, and
Okay.
I was involved in some stuff, privy to some conversations, and I just felt like, man,
okay,
take that energy to Zoom.
And if we do dip into Nick Cannon category, can Sam Levy be our resident rabbi?
I would like Sam or Joe present if we're going to talk about things that, and as much as I think a black person should be present if two white people are discussing, something that is primarily a black issue, or to anybody, just to kind of make sure, you don't, like, you can't tell people what they should or shouldn't be offended by, and I don't want to cross into that territory, you know what I mean? Without,
you don't want a Nick Cannon.
Without at least somebody, who's representative of that culture on hand to contribute and to, you understand what I'm saying? I just don't think it's fair across the board, if it were in, any culture or what have you, to just be discussing people's cultures or what have you, no matter what the intentions are or how good the intentions are, you could cross into a realm of insensitivity just by virtue of what, not knowing what you don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I figured you felt that way, but I figured I'd ask Sam. Sam could be like, "Nah, I'm good." He could, What's your take, Sam? Are you good? Are you going to
on discussing this topic?
Yeah,
sure. Let's do it.
Also, Ish, you may know that I used to be a part of a Hebrew Israelite congregation.
I do know that. I am aware.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, this was back in my Buffalo days. Not like some of the ones you may have seen in New York City, though.
Yeah.
What's that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, all right.
You probably figured based on knowing me, but you never know.
Yeah, you seem a little bit more mellow than those types.
Yeah. I probably would have not been hired on my observation day with them. They probably would have been like, "Yeah, you're not getting enough stops," and
but they're like, "You do look like us. We'll give you points for looking like us."
Yeah, you got the beard. Yeah, you got the look down, definitely. But yeah, you're just not really cutting it. So there's that.
Yeah, that's probably because you weren't. I just can't see you with your demeanor walking around. White people are the devil.
I'm totally joking. I never tried to interview with the Hebrew Israelites on the streets of New York.
Yeah, I'm not.
I don't even know how that process.
I am no fan. I've engaged with them when I was in New York, but
yeah.
Oh, good for you.
That whole trope of arguing with who's comes to play. You know what I mean?
I guess you tried it, didn't you? You did. You tried.
It takes a certain amount of chutzpah to
I see what you did there.
To go against those folks like that. I mean, definitely, I think you are. You got to be.
I was with my daughter, actually.
Really?
Yeah. And we were walking by, and I had my daughter pull out the notebook and take some notes, and you know, yeah, we
Okay.
definitely engaged, and it got to a point where they couldn't really be critical of me, so they got really defensive and were like, all
Mhm.
right, you know, we get what you're saying, but like it was pretty much they tried to flip it as why as a black man I was questioning them, because they just
Okay.
couldn't, you know, I could care less about, at the time I wasn't trying to argue against anything that they were saying biblically or philosophy, you know, due to religious philosophy, because that's just moot. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? I was
Mhm.
arguing what they had examples, historic examples, like fleur de lises and the such.
Mhm.
And, you know, I was, you know, critically questioning the uses of, you know, the usage of these, you know, items and things like that they couldn't really explain outside of, oh, this is the lily of God. And I'm like, okay, but are you aware of how it's been represented in history as well? You know what I mean? And, you know, who also has used, you know, the fleur de lis and, you know, other things, you know what I mean? So they kind of got really aggravated with me and showed me that they could be militant, which, like, I'm not afraid of you at all. You know what I mean? But
Yeah, I was
it
gonna
got to a
say it
point where it was
takes a
like, don't
certain
walk
type
behind
of
us, and you know what I
really.
mean? Yeah, but listen, man.
No, I know. So a couple questions. How old was your daughter at the time?
Oh man, she was in elementary school. I would, if I'm recalling correctly, I'd say she was a preteen.
Okay.
Certainly not 13,
Right.
but certainly not 9. You know
Right.
what I
So
mean?
about to leave maybe upper ages of elementary school.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you had her take out the notebook. So this was like a uh, a learning opportunity.
Yes.
Okay. And did
Yep.
she? And so she actually took notes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Wow.
Yep.
And do you remember what is the nature of the notes? Just like shorthand of the exact conversation that
Yeah. Some of
happened,
the
or
things that we were questioning. My point was, you know, I didn't care. I don't really care what philosophy she adopts. My point was giving her and so to speak on the job training on how to critically examine things.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's good. That's what a lot of folks don't really have is critical examination skills. That's like when I was talking to your I don't know if she's your friend, but when I was engaging with one of your folks on your page today, my point wasn't to show any side that I was on, just to
I
give you
saw that.
background.
I saw
Yeah,
that clearly.
yeah, to give you background, Sam, this was a post that Ish had about um,
Well,
ex-
before you give him background, I
yeah,
just want to say you can see by the nature of my post that I wasn't taking a specific side either.
right, right. So the
Okay.
post was like specifically to white folks, tell us why we should vote for Biden,
I saw
but
that.
don't use the word Trump in your
I saw that.
explanation. And so some people just came out and they were honest and they were like, that is the only reason. So I can't give you an explanation. And so Ish was like, okay, I respect that. I respect that honesty. And then one person came on and, she went into the old, there's no single reason. It was one of those like Biden in his 40 years has never done a single thing for
Yep,
black
I saw that.
people and this
I
and
saw
that.
that.
And I'm like, I just recognize that as what it is. I understand the sentiment, and I'm not going to argue against the sentiment itself, but
It's the
I will,
hyperbole.
yeah, I will argue the facts like that's just not true. I mean, even someone who even someone who's probably like the worst person, you know, for black people, I'm sure on one day did one good thing for black people. So, yeah, I
Mm.
just thought that was,
So you
for someone
disagree.
who has such relationships with black people in the South and things like that, I think it doesn't take a scholar to dig up a few things and recognize what that is. I
Yeah.
just feel like that style of hyperbole just always takes away from your argument.
You know, it's interesting. I didn't, the reason why I didn't respond to her is because you did.
Yeah.
And both of you are intelligent people. On sometimes I believe you guys agree, and in many cases you disagree. And I figured, well, that's a conversation that it'll just be a pleasure for me to watch and learn from. So that's the reason why I didn't really interject, because you were, you know what I mean? And then when she tagged you, I'm like, okay, well, these are two intelligent people capable of having this discussion, and I get to be privy to it, which is one of the benefits I think I get when I post some of the provocative things that I post on social media, is that I'm on some level, I'm also just trying to brook discussion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I appreciate
sometimes they
that.
go way left, but you know.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that, and like, you know, you don't want a lopsided two against one kind of thing either.
Right.
Because it often turns into something it doesn't need to be. And listen, this is, you know, I mean, we evolve over time. You know, maybe 10 years ago, maybe even less than 10 years ago, I would have been like, yeah, you're right. He hasn't done one single thing for Black people. And then we list all of the things that we already know. You know, we know about the crime bill. We know about this and that. You know, but it's not 5 or 10 years ago. So here we are. You know, maybe
I had a friend who I kind of engaged with, and I felt like she came from a perspective, and I didn't go there because it's a good friend of mine, but I felt like she came from a perspective that I was against Biden. And sometimes I want to stress to people, like, you know, I choose my words carefully. You know what I mean? And you know, I say certain things, and take them at face value. You don't have to read into it. Literally take it at face value. I'll give you the face value, or I'll give you the added value if there's value to be added. You understand what I'm saying? But in social media, I try to, you know, just take my words at face value. You know, I felt like she came to the conclusion that I was against Biden and not going to vote for Biden, which is, it's interesting because this has happened to me recently. Somebody who I don't even know, a total stranger, saw me ask some people some questions, which is what inspired this post. They on another friend of mine's page, she posted an article, and some people came on, and you know, they said some things that to me, I still feel, and people may feel differently, is just irresponsible. Is, you know, vote blue no matter who, and give me some substance. You know what I mean? Don't just tell me that. Give me some substance, because I already feel some type of way. Like, I already feel like, as far as the Black community goes, my vote is important, but not for me, for my allies. And I'm good with that. You know, you understand what I'm saying? I'm cool with that. However, you know, in the process, if you're just going to tell me, like I posted something the other day, if you're just going to tell me the sky is falling, so I need to vote for Biden, I'm asking you to give me more. And in doing so, someone else saw my comments, and rather than address my questions, she went on this rant. I don't even know this person. We're not even friends on Facebook. We have mutual friends. She saw my comment on a mutual friend's thread. She goes on a rant, and I only know because my friend told me. She was like, yeah, I had to defend you. And I'm like, really? She goes, yeah, against another friend of mine who's a college professor, and she's called on NPR. And I'm like, wow, she has those type of credentials, and she didn't answer my question. She just didn't even, you know, comment. I would have never, she just kind of observed it and got upset. And actually, speaking of, because we're speaking about the Nick Cannon thing, you know, she's a Hebrew woman, and which I found out, and she's, you know, so this is, from her perspective, voting against Donald Trump is very important, as I would find out from my friend, from our mutual friend, is very important. And so she came to the conclusion that I was not voting for Biden because what can Biden do for me? And which is, I never said that. And so which inspired actually my post yesterday and my post today, because it's like, wait a minute, does critically examining Biden tell people that I have no intention of voting for Biden? And if so, why would you come to that conclusion? I never said that.
I know, but in this particular time, things are so divided right now, and social media has done that so much to the point where even the assumption that just the statement of intent to like critically examine something can be seen now as the opposite of an endorsement, instead of just like a wait, let's actually talk about this, as opposed, because when you really love someone, that means embracing them for who they are and their flaws, and actually wanting to see them improve, like, try to overcome their flaws or better their flaws. But we're living in a time right now where if you're saying like, why do I have to vote for Biden? Like, just because, like, and without using the word Trump, it's almost like, yeah, you're declaring your intention to use critical thinking, and that right now, and everyone is like so going on emotion right now because, and a lot of that's been from social media, and the media in general has been whipping everyone up into a lather. And so that's my take on it. And actually,
I appreciate that too.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate everything you had to say too. Yeah, because what you're saying is very valid, because what you're attempting to do is really refine arguments, and that's so important. It's so important to refine people's arguments, because when it's just being reduced to an emotional state and vote for him because the other guy is doing this, like, it's not critical thinking, and you're not, I feel like you're not necessarily, or anyone who does, like, I feel like you're risking the chance of not going in there with, if you can't really explain more than just the other guy is bad, why you're voting for somebody that runs a risk for the future. And actually, it's funny, instinctively, when I read your post, initially I was thinking, for a second I fell into a trap. I was like, wait, why don't I just reach out to some of my Black friends who are huge Biden supporters and have them chip in? But then I thought about it. I was like, wait, that's literally not what it's asking. So I was like, I'll just sit back.
A couple things on that, like, Obama tried to warn us about this big divide that was happening, even to the criticism of his own supporters who wanted to
just
see
to
him.
Interject, Flav, I would say that Obama's presidency might have signaled the beginning of it, right? At least
that's wrapped up in what I'm attempting to say. That definitely is a big point, right? There's a big leap there. So whatever is happening, that represents a big leap, and it pushes people who are uncomfortable to be more uncomfortable. It pushes people who maybe are starting to feel optimistic to be happy and want to take advantage of whatever they think they are starting to accomplish. But yeah, at that time, we're dividing a lot, and it's the way that we're treating each other, right? It's not just the fact that we have different ideas, which we've always had, but like Sam was saying, it's like this internet culture. There's so much ego wrapped up in the way that we talk to each other, and we're always trying to make a point, and we're used to this echo chamber of people clapping and liking and loving whatever we say, and like we get all these endorphins when we start agreeing with other people and they're agreeing with us, and it feels real good inside of our echo chamber. That when someone comes with a different opinion, rather than try to understand what they're trying to say, and rather than have a conversation, we just jump on them right away and try to wow them with our facts. And we start to give them these history lessons like, well, don't you know that in 1993 there was this bill and this person voted this way, and the history of privatized prisons? And it's like, bruh, that's like, chill out, That's like, I don't need to hear that every time we have a conversation. I don't need to be wowed by your historical, acumen, or your, whatever it is that you think you know.
It's interesting that you say that, because I had a conversation with, again, social media, which is this is like one of the awesome awesome points about social media is that you can talk to people all over the country, people that you don't know, people with different ideologies, different opinions, different ideas,
All
you
over the
know,
world, right?
yeah, all over the world. And I had said something. I think we were talking about moderates and progressives. This was a while back, and she began to itemize history for me, which I thought her position was just a flawed position. I think I said something on behalf of moderates, which I wasn't taking a side at all. I just kind of, and I don't think she wanted to hear it. I was talking to someone else, and I said, well, the thing is, most of our children will be moderates. It's just my opinion. You understand what I'm saying? And it's because they just don't, you know, they take a hard stance on both sides of the fence, so to speak. Like they're not clearly, and maybe many of them will grow up and adopt a set of political principles that leans one way or another. But at this point, when I talk to teenagers, they're as in the middle is in many cases you know as a moderate can be on different issues. You understand what I'm saying?
Even
So,
in cases where their parents have taken a strong.
well, yeah, because we're in this generation where, like, let's take the LGBTQ community, for example. We're just a generation removed from, like, most of the teens growing up now are totally accepting of that, and I am as well. But many of their parents weren't.
Okay.
And many of their parents just didn't go to school. It wasn't okay to it not. I never had a problem with it, but what I'm saying is society didn't make it easy or okay for people to be openly members of the LGBT community until we're talking 20, 25 years. Like, they just didn't make it okay. Not that it shouldn't have been okay. It's society, us as a society, because we suck, just didn't make it okay. And I see teenagers who, in many times when it comes to their parents' beliefs, they just buck the system because they're exposed to more than we are, and at a faster rate. And I'm not talking about like hyper politics, right? Like these deep-seated politics that people may pay attention to and read the paper and watch the news on. They're more in tune to politics in play as it affects them in their daily lives. So from their perspective, and from a lot of people that I talk about, there are things that they just don't care about. There are things that they have specific opinions about. In a lot of cases, absolutely, it's influenced by their parents' politics. But from what I've been observing, and I've talked to other people a friend of mine, she's in the mental health field, and she said she kind of co-signed what I said. She was like, yeah, her children kind of lean towards the middle on things. And I feel like we're becoming this, at least this generation is growing up to become, and it all remains to be seen, but this middle ground where a lot of them just aren't going to stand for, they're not going to stand on the negative side of equality issues, but then they may be a little bit more conservative on other issues. And so when I said this, and again, this is just my opinion based upon my own observations and my own interactions with youth, and again, not fact, just my opinion. And when I said this, this lady got upset, and she goes, well, moderates, and then she just went throughout history, and moderates didn't free the slaves, and moderates didn't, and so she literally jumped, I would say, 300 years of history to get to the present day.
Yeah.
And I thought that argument was just inherently flawed because, as you know, and I think we spoke about this before, like, politics are organic, right? Certainly affected by all types of stimuli that may be at play during a given time in history, right?
Okay.
Like, liberal politics weren't the same in the 80s as they were in the the 21st century.
Mm-hmm.
There were different talking points, right? Different stimuli at play. We lived in a different country in 1985 than we did in 2015. We lived in a different country. There was a different country in 1965 than it was in 1995. And thus, the political talking points were just different. I kind of understand how parties change and how values of parties change over time.
Mm-hmm.
At any rate, that's kind of what I explained to her. I'm like, it's easy to say that a moderate didn't make this great change 300 years ago. It's just an easy argument to make because, like, what are you basing that argument on?
Yeah, we're
Right?
not 200 years ago.
Right. You know what I mean?
Well,
It's the safe argument.
well, let's look at it. I mean, there's probably a way to quantify these arguments, but we probably just don't have time or the data to back it up right now. But like, let's say, back in the day, like the folks who were abolitionists, right? They were, if you want to use the left right paradigm, just because that's what we're used to. I mean, a true abolitionist was probably pretty far to the left, even farther than the so-called, forefathers who actually had slaves, right? So
Yeah.
like, what would a moderate position be? Like, treat your slaves well, or feed them, or clothe them, or don't whip them, or chop their feet off if they try to run.
Well, so now we're really we're delving into the range of, and that's fine, but we're speculating on a deep level, right? Because the average moderate today isn't moderate on an issue. They're in the middle because, well, equality matters to them. Maybe abortion doesn't. Maybe they're not on the left side with abortion, but they are with equality. It's not, let's take equality and split it down the middle.
Well, I can do you one. What we do. Let's take police abolition or defunding the police.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a moderate does not. Let's just at least get this part out of the way, or at least agree on this part. A moderate is not about. Okay, so we got 10 minutes, just so you know, before we got to do another one. A moderate is not going to be about eventually getting rid of the system of policing. That's not what a moderate wants to do. If anything, some of them want reform, right? We've heard that word used a lot, but it's a pretty leftist, it's a pretty radical position to say, hey, get rid of the police, right? Like even your average person.
You and I had that debate because I don't stand on that side of things where it's just, hey, get rid of police.
But not even getting into all of that. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I'm saying,
a moderate, a moderate does not want that, right? So even the issues themselves are divided. I think that's a thing.
Well, here's the thing too that we also have to keep in mind, right? That it's hard to define a moderate.
Yeah.
Like, how do you define a moderate versus a centrist versus someone in the, you know what I mean? I'm sorry, Sam, go on.
That's okay. No, I wanted to jump in and say, and I feel like the reason that somebody would either call themselves a moderate or a centrist, like, I don't think you could necessarily state what you would think that means that they would take on any one position, because because people might call themselves a centrist because not because they're like take the center on every issue, but because they take a left position on some and a right position on others. Like that's what makes them feel like they're in the middle. So I don't feel like it's necessarily something where you can just say, oh, well, a moderate would like not be supporting like defunding the police. Like they could, it's possible.
They could, right.
Somebody that could define themselves as a moderate is somebody who wants to, who is like good with equality, and like what, and who is like, actually, you could use this to describe me, for instance, because I feel like it is something that I do support that, and I support like police abolition, and I also support like abortion rights and LGBTQ rights and supporting the environment. But I'm also a big proponent of free market capitalism.
Okay.
And you know, and I'm a big supporter of Israel, even though I don't love Netanyahu or like, you know, some of the things that they've been up to recently. And for some reason that has turned into like, if you're support Israel, you must be conservative, which I don't really like, but whatever, that's what it is right now. So I feel like for me, as somebody who considers themselves like center left, like I consider myself that because I take certain stances on certain issues, but it doesn't mean that I'm in the middle on every one of them.
Okay.
I think I relate to you in that I've been called a moderate. It's interesting. Some years ago, a couple
People
years
can
ago, I
call me
posted
whatever
on,
they want. That's fine.
yeah, some years ago I posted on Facebook. I said, so what side of the political fence do I lean to? It was a question I was just asking people based upon their observations of me, and many people came on and said things like, uh, Demopublican, Republicrat. You know what I mean? Like many people came on
I
and
feel
said
like
that
I either
because,
haven't heard those or it's been a long time since I've heard that. That's pretty interesting.
and it's funny, Mike, because I have friends right now that are conservative that will swear up and down to me, you're a far left liberal, and then I
Yep.
have friends that are liberal that will swear to me, Ish, you're more conservative than you are liberal. And I'm like, that's because I think when it comes to my space on social media, my friends that are like liberal, not all of them, but many of my friends that are liberal, they only see me criticizing liberals. And then they don't see the other posts. I was just telling a friend of mine this the other day, and I'm like, because he's like, you never criticize liberals. And I'm like, dude, I do it all the time. And I don't criticize, I critique. And
Yep.
Yeah,
I critique conservatives all the time.
yeah. I
Like all the
find that
time.
people who say that are usually wrong. When people say that you never do this or you never do
Yeah.
that, those people are usually wrong.
What I think it's just they kind of see what they want to see.
Part of that's the algorithm too. Don't get it twisted. Part of that's not their fault. It's the way that the algorithm is written to make you feel good on Facebook. It's like it's all uh, to drive people to buy. It's all about ads, and it's all like this driving people to buy. It's funny that way. Like years ago, we had Matt Taibbi, famous former writer for the Rolling Stones, or no, he still writes for Rolling Stones, right?
Rolling Stone, yes.
Yeah, Rolling Stone, yes.
The magazine, not the band.
Right. Well, no, they had some new hits. Some when they got kind of political or whatever, they hired Matt Taibbi. He wrote some political tunes for them, but maybe those weren't the popular tunes. Maybe you haven't heard those.
Okay, my bad.
Yeah, you didn't hear Jumpin' Jack, Noam Chomsky, or what were some
Stop
of the...
it.
No, you're right. Rolling Stone, singular.
I love it. No. Keep going.
But yeah. Anyways, years ago, he came into our office when I was working for Citizens Campaign for the Environment. This was back in Buffalo, so he used to write for local paper.
We're gonna cut out in a minute.
Oh, okay. He used to write. We got 3 minutes 45 left. He used to write for a local paper there called the Buffalo Beast. If you could ever find it online, there was some. It was wild. It was cool, and he was successful back then because he wasn't as big as he eventually became. But long story short, I got him to do a briefing for our office, and one of the discussions we got into was the nature of newspapers and the kind of stuff that they report on. And one takeaway that he gave us was it's not what a lot of leftists often think, like there's this insidious like conspiracy to not write about certain important things or to not let folks know what's going on. He said it's just all based on commerce. So the sexy stories or the big stories are what kind of drive people to buy things. It's kind of like my crude way of summarizing what he was talking about.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's like whatever. Yeah, it's not a political conspiracy. It's about like the money.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever will get people to buy more magazines.
Right.
Or so whatever they perceive that to be. That makes sense.
Yeah. So some deep dive into, what's really going on and, why are we really in Iraq and this and that. And and who's like, you know, what's the money behind the vice president, and what's he invested in, and how much money is he going to make off of that. Like, that stuff just isn't going to get people to buy stuff. Right? It's going to be like the big overarching kind of easy to digest themes, that sort of thing.
So I'm not sure that I want Facebook to be my happy place. I know I don't have any control over that. I know it's clearly, money based and, algorithms and the whole nine, but, I'd like it to be a space. Like, I wish that there wasn't a limited number of people that fall into your algorithm, and that, you could have access to all of the people that you are friends with on Facebook, just because I like varied and diverse opinions.
Yeah.
I've said this before. I've never unfriended anyone.
Yep.
I get unfriended all the time. Yeah. I've never unfriended anyone.
Well, Ish, that's one of the ways that you're pushing back against the algorithm, or at least like not creating the bubble that others are creating, just by simply not doing that and encouraging all of these like diverse voices that you have on your page.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you're definitely not like in the same bubble. Some of us are just simply based on that fact.
Well, for me, it's about
we're probably about
strategy there, right? It's about becoming better as a person, and I don't think that you can grow by restricting yourself to people that have the same ideas.
Okay, and be on standby for ending soon.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's just what it is for me. I need diverse opinions, diverse ideas.